Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, DATWORK, and this is Christian Slavery, Baptism, Whiteness, and the Gospel in Chains. I'm going to deal with our past and our present to unpack exactly why we have the issues we have today. It's 2025, and the rhetoric is loud. Conservative Christians take to pulpits, podcasts, and platforms preaching fear in the language of faith. They call diversity a threat to God's design. They call immigration an invasion. They call black protest lawlessness. They weaponize scripture as if it were a border wall, as if the gospel itself were property to be fenced in. But here's the thing, family. This isn't new. This isn't a glitch in the system. This is Continuum. The same phrases we hear today about obedience, hierarchy, and God's order are echoes of the 17th century. Back then, Protestant colonists in Virginia and Barbados weren't just enslaving Africans. They were inventing a theology to make it sound holy. They preached that slavery was God's plan. They wrote catechisms that told the enslaved to obey their masters. They passed laws declaring that baptism didn't mean freedom. It was Christian slavery, a gospel engineered to sanctify bondage. And if you listen closely, today's conservative hate speech follows the same script. Replace slave with immigrant. Replace obedience with law and order. Replace heathen with queer, black, or Muslim, or radical. The logic hasn't changed. It's still Christianity fused with hierarchy. It's still the Bible bent into a weapon against the marginalized. So when we talk about Christian slavery, we're not just talking about the past. We're talking about the roots of the present. The hate speech in 2025 isn't a rupture, it's a rerun. So does baptism make you free? In 1667, Virginia lawmakers answered, no, a baptized slave remained a slave. That single legal sentence captured a new world where salvation and bondage could and would exist. Water is everywhere in the Atlantic world, in the salt spray of the Middle Passage, in the rivers where captives were marched, in the baptismal fonts of colonial chapels. It symbolized freedom, rebirth, but in the world of slavery, water raised a dangerous question. If a slave becomes a Christian, does he stop being a slave? This baptism problem rattled empires. Virginia's 1667 law answered clearly, baptism does not free. The soul might belong to Christ, but the body still belonged to the master. That was the birth of Christian slavery. So today in 2025, conservative voices make a similar split. They say all souls are equal before God, but in practice they build walls, pass laws, and preach obedience that leaves bodies unfree. Think of Charlie Kirk, who we all talk about, telling Gen Z that diversity, anti-racist teaching, or queer inclusion destroys order. It's the same move. Water that promises freedom, repurposed to defend hierarchy. Before white was the wall, the line was Protestant versus heathen. Colonists justified slavery by casting Africans as non-Christians. Protestant supremacy secured both empire and bondage. But convergence threatened that order. If Africans became Protestants, didn't that make them equals? That fear drove planters to block missionaries. Just as today, conservative Christians warn that teaching systemic racism or affirming LGBTQ+ youth will collapse society. It's the same rhetorical defense. Keep the other outside to keep the hierarchy intact. Charlie Kirk's pitch to Gen Z, I'll say what no one dares to say, echoes planters' defiance centuries earlier. Then it was slaves can never be equals. Today, it's immigrants, black radicals, and queer kids don't belong. Both are Protestant supremacy repackaged for their moment. Missionaries wanted to evangelize. Planters feared losing control. The compromise? Laws severed baptism from freedom, catechisms drilled obedience, sermons sanctified the lash and the whip. Who gives you food? Your master. What must you do? Serve faithfully. That's theology re-engineered for profit. Today's conservative rhetoric mirrors this. Pastors and provocateurs say, we don't oppose equality, we just need obedience to law and order. Teaching critical race theory or protesting police brutality becomes rebellion. Kirk's tours warned Gen Z that any challenge to hierarchy threatens America itself. Yesterday's baptism problem is today's don't teach race in school. Different issue, same fear. Liberation will upend control. The Anglican SPG, or the Society for the Propagation of the Gospels, at Codrington plantations in Barbados proved Christian slavery wasn't hypocrisy. It was institutionalized. Profits from enslaved labor funded missions. A chapel stood in the fields where sermons preached obedience as sugar profits piled high. Conservative Christians organizations today operate similarly, raising money through conferences, merch, and online platforms while preaching that Christian identity is under attack. The funding structure is different, but the logic is the same. Profit fused with piety, identity politics sanctified by faith. And just as enslaved Africans reinterpreted scripture in hush harbors, young black Christians and allies today resist online, challenging Kirk's narrative and remixing faith for liberation. As baptism spread, Protestant supremacy broke down. The line shifted. Christian versus heathen gave way to white versus black. Laws hardened. Slavery, heredity, whiteness, free. Whiteness is still Christianity's default. Churches may preach colorblindness, but white norms dominate. Kirk's appeal to Gen Z, defining Christianity as synonymous with American whiteness, is an echo of this shift. Just as Christian once morphed into white, today Christian is recoded as patriotic, conservative, and white. Enslaved Africans resisted. They used literacy, hymns, and hush harbors to flip Christianity into a gospel of liberation. Baptism became a claim of dignity. Spirituals carried coded maps to freedom. Just as today, Gen Z resistance echoes this. Young black Christians, queer Christians, immigrant Christians call out Christian nationalism online, refusing to cede faith to conservative provocateurs. Just as enslaved Africans remixed hymns into freedom songs, Gen Z remixes TikTok, memes, and a theology to expose Kirk's racialized Christianity. But let's talk about the Protestant hypocrisy and innovation. Christian slavery wasn't hypocrisy, it was innovation. A theology engineered to save souls while chaining bodies, a gospel retooled to serve empire. Today, that innovation continues. Conservative movements pump out podcasts, TikToks, sermons that rebrand old hierarchies for new generations. Kirk's success lied not in originality, but in recycling plantation logic. Obedience framed as godly, rebellion framed as chaos, whiteness framed as divine order. That is how it is. From Virginia to Jamaica, Barbados to Pennsylvania, Christian slavery spread. Catechisms, sermons, and laws standardized obedience. Just as these ideas travel across the Atlantic, today they spread across digital platforms. Turning Point USA tours function like traveling revivals, discipling Gen Z into a racialized gospel. The Plantation Church had chapels, the modern church has live streams. Both are megaphones for hierarchy. Christian slavery built the foundation for white supremacy. Theologies that served baptism from freedom still shape Christianity today. That's why debates over critical race theory, diversity, or wokeness in churches matter. They're not new fights, they're reruns. When Kirk railed against teaching race to Gen Z, he echoes the planters who feared literacy and baptism would destabilize slavery. Both are about keeping knowledge chained. Christian slavery created a split-screen theology, salvation on one side, bondage on the other. That split still lives in churches that preach heaven but ignore oppression. Whiteness replaced Christian as the line of belonging, and it still dominates Christianity in America. White norms are default. Blackness is special programming. Charlie Kirk is the proof of continuity. His message to Gen Z that whiteness, Christianity, and America are inseparable is the modern catechism. His outrage politics mirror colonial sermons sanctifying slavery. His merch and tours echo Codrington's funding model, profit fused with hierarchy. But the counter-gospel is also alive too. Just as enslaved Africans built a faith of resistance, today's Gen Z black, queer, and immigrant folks remix scripture for liberation, challenging Kirk's narrative and exposing Christian nationalism as the afterlife of Christian slavery. This was Christian slavery, a theology of profit, a faith that sanctified whiteness, a gospel split in two, souls saved, bodies chained. And unless we name it, unless we root it out, Christianity in America will remain to be not just good news, but also a tool of white power. Because the waters of baptism still ask the same question today that they asked in 1667. Does Christianity free the enslaved, or does it just make them more obedient? Until that answer changes, the church will sound like chains. Christian slavery built a split-screen theology. One screen showed salvation, the other showed bondage. One screen showed the soul, the other showed the body. One screen preached heaven, the other ignored hell on earth. That split screen didn't vanish when slavery was abolished. It mutated. It's still alive in the DNA of modern Christianity. You hear it when pastors say, "We preach the gospel, not politics," as if oppression is a side issue. You hear it when churches spiritualize black suffering, telling us to pray harder instead of fighting systems of racism. You see it when congregations are quick to talk about forgiveness, but slow to talk about justice. And then there's whiteness. Remember how Christian gave way to white as the category of freedom. That wasn't just a colonial trick. That was the invention of racial hierarchy itself. And it still structures Christianity in America. Walk into most evangelical churches today, and whiteness isn't just an accident of demographics. It's the cultural baseline. Worship styles, preaching styles, even theology itself, coded in whiteness. The image of Jesus that hangs on the wall, white. The books assigned in seminaries, white authors. The normal way of doing church, white norms. Blackness is often treated as an add-on, a special Sunday, a diversity initiative, something to include. But whiteness, that's the default, the center, the water in the font. That's not new. That's Christian slavery's afterlife. I'll end by saying this very simply. Christianity was, is, and will be rooted in whiteness and the institution of slavery, whether that's of your physical body or your actual mind and spirit. This is DATWORK signing off.